On Friday, we'll have an unprecedented event unfold. The two largest nuclear powers in the world will sit down to talk about the war in Ukraine, a war that Russia started and America has tried to prevent from expanding to full conquest through its material support to the Ukrainian people and their President Zelenskyy, along with our partners in NATO. So this really is unprecedented territory because you have two superpowers meeting without the country's leader where they're fighting. And they're meeting in a place that's a little surprising. We have someone like Vladimir Putin, who is widely condemned as an international criminal, coming to the United States, which is usually seen as an important diplomatic gesture, to meet with President Trump at a U.S. military base. So from a Russian optic, they still like to claim in a lot of their propaganda that Alaska's part of Russia. So this is a win-win for Putin, signaling his nationalists. And frankly, for President Trump, it's a great way for him to show American military strength while also isolating the ability of the public or others to intervene with what he probably hopes is a productive dialogue. You can say a lot about our president, but one thing is very clear. He really does like this idea of a personalistic relationship where he is truly the commander-in-chief. So that means he negotiates. So it has to be a private meeting where he sets the terms, he builds a relationship that he thinks he can flip into some larger settlement. There may be a situation where you line up particular aircraft, particular vehicles, so you have kind of this politics of the strong man, where you're both cultivating the personal relationship, but you're signaling military power to try to gain that bargaining advantage, to make a second meeting possible. And then more important than a second meeting, which hopefully, like we've heard recently, would include President Zelenskyy and hopefully some key European stakeholders, would also set the grounds for the harder part of any peace deal. How do you negotiate all of the hard trade-offs that are involved for each side? What's the balance of land concessions versus reconstruction funding? To what extent is there something like a Nuremberg trial that holds Russians accountable for mass documented war crimes, including the systematic theft of thousands and thousands of Ukrainian children? These are the things that have to be talked about after the big leaders meet. So in any negotiation, you have this grand gesture moment where both sides signal a willingness to sit down. That usually unlocks the possibility of a ceasefire. When you want to make a prediction about the future, you should usually look at the distribution of events in the past, and that doesn't bode well for Ukraine. It means even if President Trump looks into Putin's eyes, which other presidents have said they did, and finds a friend, finds that he can have a ceasefire, and there's a ceasefire that sets up a second meeting, chances are a clash will break out within 6 days, and a major offensive will break out somewhere around 2 to 3 months in. That means to really make any ceasefire viable, there already has to be technical conversations going on between the EU, the United States, and other interested parties on what a ceasefire monitoring force would look like. Even if that's just like drones monitoring the front line that aren't Ukrainian drones, they're American or European. If it's jets patrolling the aircraft over Ukraine, it doesn't have to necessarily mean physical troops inside Ukraine. It could be in bordering neighbor states. The military security guarantees during a ceasefire are extremely important here. So if I was a betting man looking at what's coming up, chances are there will be a second meeting, but be prepared to be disappointed. The second meeting is usually where Putin, the subtle manipulator, will start to make more and more extreme demands, something you've already seen happen from Envoy Mitkov's initial meeting to what gets released now. So I think it's in Putin's interest to kind of slow the hostilities. He's suffering massive casualties, draw the U.S. in, extend these meetings out until he finds a time when he can conduct a larger offensive when America's distracted.